Greetings. In this video, we will take a first run at animating the rig that we've just created. We'll start by animating the box itself, then we'll animate the box top opening, along with the crank, then the jack extend and rotate will function, and then finally the squash deformer will be animated. And those are listed here, 10 through the end. On option B, we're going to skip that. So don't tackle 11.B. We'll just use the 11.A method, just for your information. Now, I think the most practical way, you could certainly experiment with getting your own animation. I've laid out some keys here, and you could just copy these. So we see that this first one is at frame 26, and you could scrub through there and see where each of these are. And then I'll review how we create these extreme curves here in the graph editor. But this is the breathing of the box. You see it take a breath, bigger breath, and then bam, and then it gets some reverberation at the end. So what I would recommend is grab your cluster handle for that middle part of the box and simply go through and set the keys. So without even moving it, as I scrub through here, you see there's no animation. All I did was get the timing right, based on that, what we saw there. So if I open the graph editor, I got it right. So here's 25, right, and here we are at 45. I can use this little icon here to go to the keys. There's 67, 100, 127, 148, and then these are just 3 units apart from each other. So we laid out all of the timing, and now we can come back and create the actual animation. So we solved the timing first. So I'll come, and it's probably best to use these little icons here which jump to the keyframe. So here I am at 25, and the box is still, right? So our animation is going to begin at 25. So I'm not doing anything. It's locked down at 25. I'll come to the next one, and we'll have it come open. Breathe a little bit. And I'm going to key over that. So I'm going to hit S. If we were to look at the graph editor now, right, we can see our scale is now animated. And we'll come through and we'll animate all the rest of the keys. So I'll use my handy dandy skip to the next keyframe. And right, this was kind of sucked in. And this first one isn't too big, right? It's getting warmed up. S on the keyboard, or in fact, maybe I'll just do it this way so you can see. So I set the key there. I'll come to the next one, 100. This is going to be a little bit bigger, right? Taking a bigger breath. And we'll key that at 100. Next keyframe, this one's going to be in probably a little bit more. We'll set the keyframe. Here's our biggest breath, our third one before the explosion, before the jack comes out. We'll key that. And now we've got the fast action. So here's where it gets spit out. We'll key it. And then we're just alternating. And we're doing less and less each time so that it gives us kind of a warble effect and gradually comes to a stop. Put that in a little bit. Put that out a little bit. And I'll move through this quickly. Now, at this point, you could just come into the graph editor to complete this, since we've got the keys already there. I can also see that when I was doing it just by sight here a moment ago, we want this to be progressively less and less. So this would look funny. This is not as though the energy is coming out. You can see that here it's doing more than previously. We want the energy to come out of the action. So in other words, I've got the move tool and I'm holding down the shift middle mouse button to change this. So I want these to be less and less, and I want this to be less and less. And as I was saying, once I understand that, I can just come into the graph editor. Again, move tool, I'm using the shift middle mouse button. And so we have that progressive fall off. So there is something pretty similar. I'm going to make this one a little bit less, right? Because this was a breath, a bigger breath, the biggest breath. So we want that. I'm imagining that the box is breathing, so that's why I'm using that term breath. And then here's the action of the jack opening. Now, if we look back at the YouTube, these curves look a little bit different, and that's because I've used my shift middle mouse button and pulled out the tangent handle. Now, a couple things. You want your free tangent length. You can right click and just make sure that it's free tangent and that you have weighted tangents. If you see the little triangle here, you can't pull on that handle. Right, we're using weighted tangents, and we can grab the little handle, and with the move tool, shift middle mouse button, we can change that. So I've pulled that out. So this is kind of hanging out there. It's making this action longer. Now if I come in here and look at where the explosion happens, this is slowing down, which is okay, but I don't also want that accelerating. We want it to be a blast. So I'd like to make this sharp while maintaining this soft. But our handles are connected, right, by default. And you'll recall back to the first semester, we can break the relationship between the left and right side of the handle by clicking this icon here, break tangents. So just once again, I have the key selected. I'd like to handle this handle and this handle separately. Currently, they're connected. So I pick the key and click on this icon here, break tangents. Now I can pull that out and I can pull that down. So this is, right, it's taking a breath and then bam, it changes direction very quickly. And so that'll give us a little bit more. So a little breath, bigger breath, and then we get the bam. And we can fine tune this. That all looked fine. And I just think there's a little bit too much action down here. So I'm going to minimize that action. We'll come to Graph Editor. And I'll just concentrate here on the scaling. Sorry, I want to select all of them. And I'm just going to zoom in here. Remember, you can select something and then hit the F key. And that's probably your best bet, right? Just pick everything and hit the F key and it'll fill. I'm thinking about what happened down here, so I'm going to select those keys and hit the F key. And I just think there was a little bit too much. So with my move tool and the middle mouse button, I'm going to, oops, I don't want both. I'm just going to minimize that. You can do it numerically here, right? If you had taken the time to generate some numbers. We could also pull these to the right, but I'm not going to do that yet. At the end, we might want to make it go slower. Right now, it's just the time between the values is the same, whereas we'd probably get a little bit more natural if we stretched it out progressively. But for the remainder of this lesson, it'll be easier if we leave it this way. And so we're just going to say that this is okay. Takes a breath, second breath, the third one, and then pow. And that's a decent warble. I'm going to just come and minimize the end. And you can see it looks like it should be minimal, but because we're so far out, we can't see that. Yeah, there's some room here, so I'll pull those way down. There was just a little bit too much action at the end. And being nice and close, we can see a little bit better. So I think that is a better fall off. So you can experiment with that. And then the next little movie helps you understand how you can coordinate this animation, right? So when the box breathes outward, the top cluster is going to rotate forward. When it comes in, it'll rotate upward. Now that movie I told you to skip, just for an explanation, I use a set driven method. If you'd like to take a look at it and maybe even incorporate it. But I think this method here, the A method, is a little bit more straightforward. But we could make the scaling of this cluster group drive the rotation of this cluster group. And that's what I've done in that B movie. But for now, let's just set our keys. So, right, I'm at 25. We can just come and at 25, right, we'll pull that. Oops, sorry, there's no movement on 25. So we'll leave 25. I'll come back here. I'll jump to the next key, and we'll grab this, and we're going to say it's forward, and we'll key it. Now, right, what is the next key I want to go to? I'm picking our completed animation, and then we're jumping to that key, 67. Could have written everything out as well. And when it's in, we're rotating back, and we'll key it. And so going back to this handle, right, we'll come to 100. I'm going to skip to 100, come back and grab this guy. We'll say forward. We'll key it. Where's our next key? Select what we've already animated, jump to it, grab back to what we are animating. We'll key that. We'll jump to the next key, pick here, key. And now for the next part, let's just take a look. So here is where it opens, and we'll have it kind of, oops, forgot to switch back. We'll have that. And then this is going to just warble back and forth. And it's every 3 keys. So we could use that same method of just very quickly coming in here and setting those keys. So 54, and I actually did write them down. So I'm going to do this real quick by putting the keys in first, and we'll do the animation in the graph editor. So I'm going to say 54. I'm just going to hit that, and then it's 57. And then 60, right? We're just going by threes, 63, 66, 69, 72, 75, 78, and 81. So now there's no animation there, but we just established the keys. So we did kind of animate as we were going along, and then now we've got these little tiny things. We just set the keys. We'll come to the graph editor, and right, this is rotating, not scaling, and it's actually just the rotate X. And so we got that right here. It is rotating forward, and in fact, let's make this progressive. So we'll make it kind of less and more, right? And this should be the greatest. So we'll. Right, so it rotates forward a little bit, backwards a little bit more, a little bit more. And then, bam, we get the warble. Here's all the keys we just established. And we can just, we'll take a look at what this does here. And we didn't get it going forward, so that would be these. And we can do that all at once. We'll pull that, and then I'm using the control key to deselect. And I'm still, I am missing, let's see, this should be the down. So let's give ourselves a key, because I'm not seeing it properly in the graph editor. So we want these to be a lot higher. So I was eyeballing it, but I was eyeballing it the wrong way. Let's pull that like there. And here's the 0. I should have seen that. That makes total sense. We want these to be above the 0. These are progressively less, and this is coming to a stop. So I'll put in a nice whole number on the last one. And there we've got it progressively less and less. And we'll see that. And there we go. I think it's probably a little bit too much. So again, just to minimize it, I'll bring these closer to 0. It was just a little bit, in my mind, a little bit too much action, right? The jack is now coming out. This is kind of just a secondary reactive animation. So if we didn't have it, we'd probably notice it, but too much may be distracting. So that's about right. All right, now the box, so let's look at those together, right? We can come, I've got both handles selected, and I'll pull out. Now our rotation are much greater values than the translation, so it's a little bit hard to see everything at once. But here are our scaling, right, of this handle, which cluster, which represents those 4 lattice points. And then I'll pick the rotate and hit F. Oh, and it was actually just X. And so there is the box top rotation. Here is spring coming out, and then we've just got some progressively coming to a stop or to a rest. All right, let's keep going. We'll, right, where does the action happen? Boom, right there. So we can come to 150. And we'll, let's say right there, 149, I'll hit S, and, oops, yeah. And this is, let's go with 3 frames. So it's gonna come all the way up, and I'll set that. And then it's gonna bounce a couple of times. So as if it's hitting the back of the box, we'll have it bounce. And remember that I limited my rotation, so I can just push it back and go all the way. And we'll have this up. And so this is very slight. And then we also want to make it look like a bounce. So it hits. And we can change the values. Maybe I didn't give it enough forward action. So let's take a look at that. So we can hit the F key. I'm going to select these guys and hit the F key, and I want it to come up a little bit more. So I had it bounce, and I think I want it to come forward a little bit more. So you can see, right, maybe about there. And then this one, and this one. Now the other thing, we want it to look like it's hitting, right? And if you think back to the first semester bouncing ball, we broke those tangents. Now that doesn't look bad actually, but let's make sure we understand the concept. I'm going to pick all the bottoms. This is where it's hitting the back of the box. And we'll break those, and then we can make it, right, have that abrupt hit. And again, if you didn't have control of those, right, we were doing weighted tangents, and they're free length. So now it's going to open and bounce a little bit. And I'm not sure if I like that better than before, but just make sure you understand how to do it. Yeah, that's all right. Maybe I don't want it all the way at the end. So, right, and we're fine-tuning all of this in the graph editor. And that's probably why it looked a little funny. I forgot to do the last one. So there we go, bounce, 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 bounce. And if you wanted to do one more, maybe we could even do just one more. Just these little bits at the end of an animation coming to a rest. It really gives, now I set that too far forward. I'm going to right click it and say cut. I'm just going to move it over 1 frame and paste. I'm going to grab this one, cut, and move it just 1 frame and paste. So, oh, bam, 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 and then one little one there at the end. And we know we want to get this right in the graph editor. We can see here. I'll select those, hit F, and we'll break this one. right? We added one. We'll break it, pull that up, and we'll let this last one just come to a stop. There we go. Something like that. You can play with that. So there is the box animation. And why don't you pause here and get to this point, and then pick the video back up, and we'll execute the jack spring. Okay, so now animating the jack after you've got your box the way that you want it. Right, we've got the main locator for the jack. That was our last rig from last week. And here are some numbers for you. If you want to put those in, feel free to try it on your own. What we want is a big blast, and then for it to come to a progressive stop, you can just input those numbers. You can use the same method that we did last time. Pick the locator and just go to each one of these frames and just hit S. Don't even worry about changing any values. Just lay them all down, S, 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 till you get to 270. And then you can come back, and I've set that here, right? So here are all the keys. And then I went ahead, and that's my greatest value, so all the way up, and then down, up, and then it just comes to a progressive stop. We can look at that in the graph editor, right? So there it is. It explodes out and then comes to a general stop. So go ahead and execute that, right? And if we play that, we'll see that. And then once we've got the up and down, similar workflow, right? We dialed in the breathing, and then that allowed us to know exactly when we would set keys for the box top, right? Rotating down. In a similar fashion, we just concentrated on our vertical, and now we can very quickly go through, and here at 153, this guy would be over, and right, we can just push him all the way over, and we can just key right over that. And we'll come back to the other side, and we'll set it. We'll skip, right? So I'm skipping in the middle. Set it. I'm skipping 77, not quite as far, hitting S. We'll skip 183 and go to 189. And key over the top, I'm hitting S on the keyboard this time. 206. Key, skipping 217 to going to 232. S. 247 we're skipping, 271, and that is where we'll come to a rest. So we'll put that at 0 and hit S. So now we've got the action of back and forth, and that was a little bit too much. I think those first two are a little bit too much. Well, we can minimize those. Yeah, let's minimize those a little bit. And you know, good idea to go to the, I think that's a little bit too far. In fact, he's probably, and he is, coming through there. So that's a little too extreme. And we'll just fix that now in the graph editor. I'll hit F, and we're talking about translate X, right? So we can see that here, and I've got my move tool selected, shift middle mouse button. Oops, and let's go to that. Wait, here we are. Let's pick that one, and I'm minimizing it, right? So it's not so far over. And then I'll click this guy here to get to the next one. So there he is in the middle, and then here he is out on that side. And I think that's a little bit too much. So I'm going to minimize the value. And then we want to make sure that these values are coming progressively less, right? So that's about right. If we scrub through there, right, he's to the left, and then down, back, 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 and then comes to rest in the middle. All right, and then our final step is our squash deformer. And so in this case, we're going to be animating the factor, and you could put in all those numbers. We could just key the factor in that same, on all of those, right? I could come to the locator, and we could say 150. All right, I want my factor here, and key it, and we could go through and lay down all those keys. At this point, we can kind of just do it by eye because we've got all of the animation laid out. So we can just scrub through and key as we go. There's a variety of methods we can employ here. Let me just do one where we just eyeball according to the animation. So I want my factor at 0. I'll key that. And then when he comes out, there's the high point. So let's think of a number. I'll scrub, let's say 0.2. So now that's out, and we'll right click and hit key. If I hit S on the keyboard, I get all of this keyed. So I'm just going to directly key the factor, keep things clean. And then when he's down all the way, let's make that the negative value. So 0.02. And we'll key it, and then come up. There's his extreme position, and so we'll say 0.015. Oops, you know what? I'm putting that in 0.15. I think I made a mistake on that last one. This should be negative 0.2. There we go. Sorry about that. And so I'll scrub when he's down, right? That's his low point, negative 0.15, and we'll key it. Then when it's up, we'll do 0.1, key it, negative 0.1, we'll key it. Next high position is about there. So now let's do 0.075 and key it, negative 0.075, key it. Let's do 0.05 and we'll key it. Low position, negative 0.05. And for this last one, giving this guy some warble, I'm going to do 0.05 again, just to extend this animation a little bit more. There's our low, negative 0.05. And let's do 0.025. Low position there, negative 0.025, and that should do it. And then we'll just have it, well, you know what I'm going to do, yeah, we'll bring it to 0. And so let's take a look at that. That has some nice squash. And the final step isn't any more keying. We've got everything keyed. Everything, our whole rig is keyed. And we have a nice animation there. Oh, I see I missed the handle. And I actually forget in which movie the handle is. So let's finish this thought on the squash deformer. Watch this one more time. Right, so the squash is happening at the exact same time as the spring. If we offset it, we'll get more of a chain reaction. So I've got my squash deformer selected, just the squash deformer. If you want to open your joint chain and pick that squash deformer, you can. And let's look at this in the graph editor. So there is our factor. If we wanted to change anything in here, we could come back. Maybe we want to have these minimize a little bit better. Maybe, oops, I don't want to move it that way. So something like that. But I'm going to grab all of it. And you can see here it says 275. Whatever value you see there, move tool, shift middle mouse button. I'm going to shift it over 3 units, 3 frames. So we're going to select everything and delay it by 3 frames. And then we'll get a chain reaction. So shift middle mouse button, and I'm going to say 1, 2, 3. So now it says 278, whatever value, right, 275 plus 3, 278. So I've offset it 3 frames, And now if we watch it, right, and my graphics card is skipping there. So it's a little bit more of a chain reaction. And to really take a look at it, let's just look at our NURB surfaces, and we can put an outline on them. And that's what I was saying. We missed the crank, at least on this one. You may have already done it if the video called for it earlier. Oh, and one other thing, couple things here. The top of my head is poking out. Maybe the top of your head is poking out as well. One real easy solution is just to animate the visibility. So we'll come, here is right where our animation starts. So at 149, I'm going to have the visibility of the head off. I'll key that directly. I don't want to hit S. I'll break this information, this incoming. And then just in one frame, I'm coming to 150. Now it's on. So it was off, and then over the course of one frame, it comes on. So I don't see that head poking out through there, and then it appears. So you can key the visibility of your head if it's poking through the top. Okay, and then the final thing, let's animate the crank. I'm going to set a key at frame 1, and you could do it right on the X, right? The X is what we're animating. Make sure you got crank extension. And then we'll come to the point, that's right where the explosion happens. Let's make this 1,000, and we'll key it. And then I'm going to come out maybe to about 200. And let me see, did I get that value right? I put in 100. I want this to be 1,000 actually. And then I want this value, let's say 1,300. So the crank is rotated 0 at frame 1. I rotated 1,000, right? So 360 almost 3 times. And then just added another revolution, or not quite a revolution. And we'll look at that just having set the keys. So there the crank is going. And I actually want it to be accelerating, right? Because we've got this anticipation. So we want this to be going faster, 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 and then it's slowing down nicely. So let's achieve that in the graph editor. I've got rotate X here. And so we've got it slow at the beginning, and then let's just make this going faster, faster, faster. And then here's where the pop takes place, and then it goes slow. So that's why we wanted that key right where the action happens, so that we can have it go the other way. Crank is starting. Maybe that's a little too slow. You could speed that up. Yeah, let's increase everything. So I put in 1,000 there. Let's go all the way up to, you know, somewhere around 2,000. So I said 1,000 initially. Let's double everything. This will make it start off more quickly too. So there we go. And now it's cranking. And let's just get funny. We could come, need to have that selected. And let's put that up even more. Let's really have it spin. This will be funny. Yeah. Now it's really cranking, and then pop. Now it started to slow down before the pop, so let's just offset that. Oops, I clicked off it. So I'm gonna pull this down here, and I don't want this, I want that to just be uniform right when that pop happens. And here we go. Yeah, now it's going nice and fast, and then comes to a stop. That's right. So give that a shot. That's a lot to animate. We are taking this project 3 times. Here we've just gone through everything, and you're following things very much according to the way that it's laid out. We'll do a second version with a new head, and then we'll really critique that second version, and we'll be finished with that about the midterm. And we'll be doing a variety of projects, but this is our through line project. And then from midterm to final, you'll really be fine tuning the animation. So if your first one isn't quite perfect, work on it, refine it, refine it. But we'll get there. It doesn't really have to be perfect until your final, obviously. The other thing, you should be increment and saving, right? And this is a project where you'll make some mistakes, and it's easier just to go back to a version that you saved 10 minutes ago rather than try and undo any of the mistakes that you made. All right, questions in the discussion forum. Have a good one.